Welcome to another episode of Six Figure Secrets for Fractional Experts. My name is Bradley Jacobs. I'm your host, the founder and CEO of Mylands. Today, I'm with Robin. Robin's the founder of Fearless Business, regular speaker at various business events, and best-selling author of several books, including Online Business Startup, Marketing Machine, and the recent popular release, Take Your Shot. Robin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bradley. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you. So expand on my introduction a little bit more. Tell our listeners who you are, what makes you unique, different, like what helps you stand out in this crazy market of coaches and speakers and writers, all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a couple of things that were missed out in the bio. So obviously, first and foremost, I'm a dedicated husband and I'm a girl dad. I've got two girls who are 10 and 8. Very keen surfer, not very good at it, and cyclist as well. And then, my day job. So I'm a business coach. I didn't start out that way. I used to run a marketing agency for my sins for 12 years. We founded that in 2004 and I eventually sold it, not for a huge amount, but we sold it in 2016. And I suppose during those 12 years, made pretty much every mistake that you can possibly make during, a 12-year career in marketing. But equally, I also learned a heck of a lot through that journey as well. And when I eventually sort of exited that agency and sold it, there was a lot of people came to me and started sort of wanting to pick my brains, other agency owners saying, "Hey, this is really exciting. How did you manage to get a buyer for it?" And so, essentially, Bradley, I do pretty much anything for coffee and cake. So before I had a sort of an idea about what direction I was going to take next, I used to meet the agency owners, several of them, sort of just for informal mentoring sessions and sort of talk them through the process of how I productized our offer, which was quite unusual back in the day in terms of like graphic design and marketing and things like that. How we priced it, how I confidently was able to sort of pitch it and sell it to clients. And pretty much that's what I do now. So I've been coaching now for just over 8 years. Absolutely love it. I've tried the corporate thing. That didn't gel with me just because you can't always often see the results with clients, for larger corporate businesses. So now I work predominantly with just small grassroots one-person businesses where directly when we have our coaching conversations that, a few weeks or a few months later, you can see the direct impact, whether it be in their cash flow and profitability, or maybe even just in terms of like life choices that, we've had clients who've been able to save up for a deposit for their first house, or maybe save up for their wedding or get an office in their local town. And we have got a couple of fearless babies as well, because people have felt they've got enough freedom in terms of their personal finance to be able to afford to start a family as well, which is pretty cool. So that's what I do and why I do it.
Amazing. So much there I want to dive into. And I want to start with you help people make more money, get their time back, right? One of your things is about working smarter, not necessarily harder. When you work across all of these coaching clients, if you could pull out the number one thing you see that helps someone go from, making a little bit of money, making ends meet, maybe sometimes up and down roller coaster, to this more financial freedom, abundance in money and saving for things like a house and a family, what's that number one thing that you would say?
The major thing is around the people's perceptions of how you grow a business. And there's several different ways that you can grow a business. So the first one is you can cut costs and then reinvest some of that money back into the business's growth. So that's what I call the accountant's favorite. Accountants love to find creative ways to save you a bit of tax or save you some of your overheads. But I feel sometimes it's short-term thinking. You're only talking about a marginal gain here because you save a bit of cash and some of that you can reinvest back into your business for growth. But there is space. Especially during, if there are tough economic conditions or COVID, for example, something like that. Those are great reasons to kind of just, steady the ship a little bit and just and cut back. The second way people then look at growing a business is charging more for the same product or service, essentially. So that's my sweet spot, and we'll hopefully come back to that. But the final way is the way which most people tend to gravitate towards, and that is selling more of the same product for the same price, so i.e. marketing. And the challenge with that is that a lot of businesses aren't really set up for profitability. So typically what happens is somebody will come up with a great idea for a product or service. And I actually see many very well-established businesses doing multiple sort of 7 and 8 figures making these similar sorts of mistakes. How many times do we see $1 million plus business, but they're losing 100K a year, for example? So, and they think the answer is, well, we'll just send more clients into the business and then that'll generate more cash flow. Unfortunately, though, if the business model is not profitable, i.e., it's a flawed business model, what happens when you add more clients into the mix is you're exaggerating an already existing problem within the business. So I have this view that actually the dream business is one where you're working with half the clients, but you're making double the revenue and or profit within the business. Because what happens is kind of like this virtuous cycle which you create. So initially, like getting more clients and not making much money, I call it the sales cycle of doom. You're going sell, deliver, sell, deliver, sell, deliver, and it's very frenetic and there's not much time. And the clients are like, there's a lot of stress and pressure, and it's like sell, deliver, sell, deliver, sell, deliver. And then you get ill or something, life happens, and then you stop for a bit, and then you kind of take a deep breath and off you go again. But when you charge a little bit more for your products or services, what happens is you end up with more time to deliver a better quality product or service for those clients, which produces better results. It makes it more sticky. So there's more money on the back end because then clients will stick around, they'll invest more into your services. And so you create this really virtuous cycle. And it's a little bit like, I don't know if any of your listeners or you are into sort of physics. It's a bit like, imagine you have the business owner at the center of it, this gravitational field. So you've got sell, deliver, sell, deliver, sell, deliver, and it's a very strong gravitational field. But if we just extract that a little bit, when you go out into space, time actually goes slower, and the gravitational field is slightly weaker. And so that's what we're trying to create, is just this business where we have far more time, we're making a bit more money. Most importantly, it's also fun, because there is nothing worse than sort of that Sunday night dread. You've got all these clients clamoring for stuff to get done and staff that are pulling on your resources. Like, you don't want to go to work. Whereas in this more wholesome, virtuous cycle, like, you're excited because you've got a bit of space to be creative and like work really hard with the client to get them a great result.
So much there. That's Sunday night dread. I'm going to come back to that. I made myself a note to come back to it because that's something I'm passionate about as well, as getting out of that. Let's talk a little bit about what you just said, right? It's charging more for the same product or service. It seems like, is this the correct assumption that people go into the market undercharging for the value that they bring?
Yeah, essentially, they're massive. Most people undersell themselves. So the statistics are quite interesting across a broad range of different industries. It typically, the top 10% of businesses in any one industry extract about 60% of the value out of that industry.
Wow.
So what happens is the remaining 90% of people are scrapping over just 40% of whatever's left. So, and the reason this happens is, and it's a really simple explanation. You ask most people how they set their prices, and they'll say, "Oh, we went and looked at our competitors, and then we sort of made a decision based on that." And that's great. Go and look at your competitors, because you can learn some stuff from your competition. But again, it's the assumption that you know, your belief that they actually know what they're doing. Because again, what if they've priced their products, you know, so that's in a loss-making way, the business model doesn't stack up? You're about to go and copy a flawed business model. And also, when you look at a group of people in an industry, you know, Dave's looking at Rachel's prices, Rachel's looking at Susan's prices, Susan's looking at Peter's prices, Peter's looking back at Dave's prices. Well, which one of those four are an expert in pricing? Right? None of them, probably. So there's some assumptions there, and people aren't really setting their business up for success and actually doing. There's a process which I call goal-focused pricing. So we can look at our competitors and roughly see what they're charging, and maybe we can go undercut them, and just because we think that's a way to get clients. Obviously, it doesn't work, so it doesn't lead to profitability. We can go middle of the road because we believe that we don't want to be seen as the cheapest. We don't want to be perceived as the most expensive because nobody will buy from us. And then there's one person who gets to be the most expensive. So, but on the flip side, if we actually just take it like, this isn't even business planning on a page. This is like business plan on a postage stamp, goal focused pricing, right? So I'll keep the numbers super simple. And I know you've got some very smart people here, so they'll be able to scale this up and hopefully apply it to their business. The business plan on a postage stamp, right? And we'll keep the numbers super simple. So let's say you want to earn 100K. That's your goal for the next financial year. We'll just keep it really simple. And initially, when you're thinking about your prices, you go, okay, well, maybe we'll charge $1,000 for this thing. So we take the big number and we divide it by the little number. And quite often when I do this so I do this exercise in front of rooms of people, and you can see people's eyes popping out of their head, because all of a sudden they're like, wow, 100 clients. I've got to get 100 clients in the next year and serve them. And so you can start to then unpack the numbers to make sure that it economically stacks up. So next question I'd ask is, okay, well, if you can't service 100 clients, how many could you service? And they might say, oh, 20 clients. Okay, so we're at 5 times the difference of where we need to be. So you want to sell this product at 1,000, but you can't deliver that. That'll produce 20K. So we need to somehow elevate the value, the perceived value of what your offer from $1,000 to $5,000. So that takes care of, so in business, you have sort of supply and demand. So that takes care of the supply side of things. Capacity, yes, 20 clients, 5K. How we get to 5K, that's probably another, a continuation of the conversation. You can ask me questions about that because there's a process. But then also you can then start to look at now the demand side of it. Okay, if we can supply 20 clients, can we stimulate enough demand in the marketplace to enroll 20 clients into our business as well? And that's it. That's just the simplest business plan that you can operate around, just knowing those very basic numbers that make the business stack up.
The average person comes to me and says, I'm making $3,500 a month for a retainer for a client. And I'm like, well, how many clients are you doing? And they're doing 3, and it's, taking up all of their time. So they're scrapping out maybe 10K. And I'm like, my God, you really want to you have to change something, because you can't just add more 3.5K retainers, right? there's not enough hours in the week. You really need to upgrade this, right? So, but that person, the mindset that person is in, they feel like it's impossible. Like it seems so foreign that they're going to just offer the same thing from 3.5K, and instead they're going to charge 7 or 10 or 12. What do you tell that person that's in the 3.5K a month, feels like it's impossible, they're totally at their ceiling, but they really could be charging 2, 3, 4 times?
First of all, they need to recognize and admit the fact that they've kind of capped their earnings potential by charging it's an effective hourly rate on their time, because you could take those 3.5Ks and divide it by 160 hours, and that's their hourly rate that they're charging. What I would actually be looking at is like, what does the client actually get for that retainer? And typically they'll then start to dive into all of the things that they do for that client, but they don't ever talk about the results of the thing which they do for their client. So they could be doing a 3.5K retainer for a client that's turning over $20 million, right? But the value of their work, which could be generating significantly more than $3,500 a month's worth of like value to that client. So this is where we get into the realms of like starting to productize a service. So, and there are 3 core principles around productizing, which we need to look at. So the first one is, what is the dream outcome or result that the client is looking for? And can we deliver?
I'm going to stop you real quick. Tell us, before we go into the 3, what does productizing a service mean?
So it's this concept of like, I mean, we all know how a service works. It's that very much that time for money exchange. But when you look at products, they're a tangible product with a very clear and specific outcome. So you go and buy a car, you know what features you're going to get on it. But the missing piece of the puzzle is not like, there are some people who buy a car just to get them from A to B, and it's very practical. But people buy things also based on for other reasons. So the obvious one being emotion, right? It's not just about getting from A to B, but how does that car make us feel when we put our foot down on the accelerator? So there is this tangible result. Another intangible or tangible result which you could get from it is, does it turn people's heads when you drive down the street? So do you get the kudos and but a lot of people, service-based business owners, will focus solely on like the feature set, what it is that I do. And like I said, this is probably is it okay if I share the 3 things? Because it's a good point to sort of.
Yes. I just want to set everyone, because we throw around productized service and it sounds amazing. People come to me and saying, I want that. And I think a lot of people aren't aligned on what it means. So I just wanted to get a shared definition in place, and like, yes, now let's go into those 3 pieces.
Think of it as being like, it's a fixed set of like things which are glued together. So in service terms, what that means is, because a lot of service clients will say, well, it depends. when you talk about results and outcomes, it depends on whether the client delivers this thing back to me on time. It depends on lots of different things. It depends is code for there are too many variables in your business. And if you can strip out some of those variables in your business, I start to create products, packages that are, fixed size and scale and fixed set of features, but do a specific thing. You can then build systems or processes around it in order to make the delivery of it very predictable. So the idea behind productizing a service is that effectively you try and figure out how to do one thing really well for one specific type of client and do it over and over, so many times so you get really good at doing it. And also, most importantly, it delivers a predictable outcome for clients. I mean, you only have to look at something like an iPhone, right? Very beautiful product, okay? Does some amazing things, and I run my business off this. But imagine if the billions of phones that Apple and Samsung are churning out, that they had to customize each and every one of these for every single client. You couldn't productize it, right? Now it's a bespoke phone service, okay? And they would have far fewer clients as a result of it. And I don't know whether they would still be able to add in even more value than, I think the latest one I'm looking at with insurance and everything is like £1,600, so about $1,800, right? So what happens is they make the product as good as they possibly can do and beautiful as they possibly can do across the board. So it's aesthetically and physically pleasing to as many people as possible. But then this is where the magic happens. They've created the most boring business ever. You know why? Because this thing goes on a production line, millions of them, with the same chip being added, the same screen being added, the same buttons being added. It's a really boring business behind the scenes. That's what productizing a service is about. Building a boring, predictable business, right? But coming back to the three things. So do you know what? It's the first time, Bradley, actually, I've ever been asked that question. So I'm really glad you have. And now I have an answer to it. So thank you. Firstly, when it comes to services, productizing a service, you have to be able to define what that outcome is. But for the client, put yourself in your client's shoes. What is it that they're really paying for? What are they expecting from it? The second thing, and this is where it depends creeps in, is can you deliver it over a fixed period of time? And again, a lot of consultants falter at this point, for example, because if they are good at what they do and they have to deliver then it takes them 3 months to deliver that result. Well, now they've done themselves out of a job. So they collect their 3 lots of $3,500 or whatever a month, $10,000. And then, okay, now we've got to go and search for more clients. So this is where like time for money type services, selling day rates, selling retainers and things like that, in my view, could potentially be seen as a little bit unethical. Because whose interest is it to continue to sell more months? Well, it's in the consultant's interest, whether they're getting a result or not, right? So there's this like, and I know most people are like decent human beings. They wouldn't do this. They wouldn't just like sell loads of months unnecessarily, if it wasn't delivering results for clients. So we want to figure out, can we deliver this product in a specific period of time? And then finally for a fixed fee. So I'm going to test you now, Bradley. You're going to help me out with this, okay, and help the listeners out there. Did you have a consultant in mind who is selling something for $3,500 a month? Don't name them, obviously, but have you got somebody in mind?
Yes.
Okay, what is it that they sell? What's their service?
It's SEO.
SEO. Okay. What's the purpose of SEO? What would be a dream outcome for somebody if they buy an SEO package?
Driving. I mean, the what I'd say is top ranked on Google, but the real outcome is driving traffic to the website, growing increased traffic that eventually results in leads and then eventually sales for the business.
Great. Okay. So, and also a bonus for that could be if they've been investing lots in paid, well, can we replace that with some organic traffic? So there could be cost savings to be had, as well as obviously, bumping up, rankings on Google, and then obviously staying up there. So I've done a bit of SEO work in the past. So hopefully we're on the same page here. Roughly how long would it take to start seeing results?
I think
on average.
on average, probably 6 months. I mean, I think SEO takes time. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we do initially is we go, okay, we'll build a 6-month SEO package to get you to number one, increase your traffic, hopefully increase conversions as a result of that, and then also start to reduce your ad spend. So that's a good result. Okay. And you might choose to define that a little bit more, but for the sake of this role play, that's fine. So all we do initially is we go, right, 6 months, times by $3,500. So that's 21K. So initially what we get comfortable doing is saying the big number. We get comfortable saying, no, it costs 21K to work with me. This story also leads into, so it's not just about productizing and packaging up the service and increasing your prices, but it also leads into cash flow. Cash flow often is the thing which people just don't pay any attention to, and it ruins businesses. So you can have a really positive looking business when it comes to like profit and loss. So, it looks good on paper, but if the cash flow cycle is negative, which does happen, or not very positive, you could have a really, nothing in the bank, but really positive P&L. Again, we'll come back to that. So thinking about this, so imagine you were going to sell SEO services, 6-month project package, 21K would be the starting point. Now, what we've done is we've kind of come to what we call an intellectual answer to solving that pricing problem. Now, put yourself in the shoes of the SEO consultant. So now just imagine, Bradley, that you're selling that SEO package. And imagine that there's a world in your future where actually could you sell that 6-month package to businesses for 50K, right? How far into the future could you, now I know we're hashing this, you're role playing it, but put yourself in the shoes. How far in the future do you think as an SEO consultant, how long do you think it would take to get to 50K? How many
For
years?
one client.
As your client.
Yeah, but I think if I'm role playing, I would say I would want to prove it out with a number of existing clients that I could show the value, that I could ethically charge that much money because I'm creating that much value, if not multiple times that value for the client.
Great. So, but would it be fair to say that if you had that evidence, and maybe it takes you a year, 2 years, 3 years to collect that evidence, you could see yourself charging 50K for it? Okay. Now this is where it's going to get hard, but we'll see where we end up with this, see whether it works or not. Remember what I said about intellectually, this is how we try and solve pricing problems, because it's numbers, right? We do some maths and we end up with an answer. But there's two sides to this story. What we're going to do is we're going to bring that 50K product back to present day, and imagine that we've got to start to elevate our prices. 21K is cheap, right? Do you agree? 21K is now cheap.
For 6 months, yeah.
Yeah, 6 months. So, but what we've done is, again, a lot of people with pricing, they see it as binary. So too cheap or too expensive, it's in or out, I'm in or out, it's a yes or a no. Pricing actually operates along bandwidth. So what we've just created here is bandwidth between 21K and 50K. We've done an intellectual problem solving thing to get there, okay? But let's imagine now, and you're just going to have to lean into this and just play along, see where we end up. It doesn't work every time, but I've got a pretty good success rate. I'm going to say some numbers, and imagine we've got to elevate our prices from 21K because it's too cheap. I want you to think about just when you get that visceral reaction to a number that is you let me know, but don't say anything. I just want your body just to relax and just let us know, So 21K, 25K, 28K, 30K, 32K, 35K, 38K, 40K, 42K. You got no, okay, so I saw the corners of your mouth smiled there. Was that because you were starting to feel that tension? Just a little bit of tension between?
Yeah, I felt some, basically at the big milestones. It felt like 30K, there was certainly ooh, that sounds pretty big. And then 40K, there was another one. I was like, ooh, that's another big milestone. That's what it felt like.
Let's focus on the first one at around about 30K. So was the 30K just outside or just inside your comfort zone?
It felt like just outside. 28 felt like, ooh, we're getting there. I could feel it a little bit. And then 30, I was like, oh, that was it. That felt like, yeah.
Cool. Great. So it kind of worked. Okay. So let me just rationalize this. So when I'm doing this exercise, it was slightly different because it's not you selling this product directly, but so you didn't react actually at that particular point. You didn't. Normally I'm looking for a body language cue. So just an inflection, an eye movement. Sometimes people have a proper gut reaction. You can see it, they properly withdraw or whatever.
Yeah.
But you've told me, you explained it there, that you hit 28, 30 took you over that. So what happens in that moment, that gut reaction, is our emotions, our subconscious is starting to kick in and say, actually, that's what your true worth is. Right? So immediately what we've done is we've elevated your prices for that package 6 months from 21 to 28K, which that's not a huge, I mean, well, let's not, it's 7K. That's quite significant over the course of six months,
Sure.
over 1,000 a month, right? So our intellect typically is the thing which kind of holds us back, because we're doing all of this comparisonitis, comparing ourselves to the competition, and what does our accountant think of these prices, and what's the traditional way that consultants sell, and all this is happening up here. But actually our gut down here is going, no, come on, that's way too cheap. Come on, put your prices up. I've done this exercise and we have got to a point. Typically what happens is we end up round about 2 to 3 times what we start out with when I do this exercise with vast majority of clients. Some clients we've gone as much as 5 or 6 times what they originally started out at, because
Wow.
they know they're vastly underselling themselves. The other thing which kind of ties into this then, I mentioned about cash flow. So again, when you're charging 3.5K per month, it's like, yes, it looks good on paper because we've got clients locked in for X number of months at 3.5K a month. But the challenge with that though is that this month we collect 3.5K. We've, over the course of 6 months, we've now got, we'll do the maths now, 17,500 sat on the table that we can't get to. So our cash flow is poor in many respects, right? So what we want to do,
come back. There you go. Got it.
so, sorry, it's I tend to get quite animated. So
Yeah, I love it.
So what we're looking to do is we within this process of building our own value, we want to be getting comfortable around how we articulate the value, but also practically, we want to focus. Imagine this is our business and this is us, and we've got our own mindset wobbles and things like that. Our business needs cash. That's it's oxygen, and you wouldn't deprive your favorite pet or one of your children of oxygen, would you? And you should treat your business the same. We want to feed it cash because that's what it keeps it going. So now we're going to charge 28K for our 6-month SEO package. What we want to do is we want to charge a lump of cash up front. Let's call it you could call it a deposit or an enrollment fee or a startup fee or just anything like that. And typically with something like SEO, the work is front loaded anyway. So what I'd be looking at is probably something, I've got to do some maths in my head. I'd probably do something like 8K up front and then 5 installments at 4K. Same money, same amount overall, but we've collected 8K up front, which is positive cash flow. In our bank, we can get other consultants in to do some of that work if we need to. We can reinvest some of it to marketing to get more clients. We've got money to spend. And we've anchored the client still into that same monthly thing. So if at the end of the 6 months they want to continue, well, we just continue at 4K a month. It's nice and simple.
Right.
You can see, obviously, when you start to go from like 21K, but maybe we hit like 50K for that package. And maybe what we do is we do, I don't know, 20K up front and then 5 installments at 6K. You can see the impact that has on creating a positive cash flow cycle within a business.
Robin, have you read Built to Sell?
Yeah, I do. It has. That's funny you say that, right? So I have one book on my shelf over there alongside pictures of my children, my Guinness World Record, and a couple of other awards I've won. Built to Sell is like my favorite book of all time.
I mean, it is I read it very recently, and it's such a simple read, right? When you read it through, you're like, oh my God, this is so common sense almost, but the way it's portrayed is genius. He does such a good job. And so much of what you're describing resonates so much from the book, right? Of productizing the service and charging up front, positive cash flow cycle, all of it.
The clue and the proof is in the pudding that it has that hallowed place. So I read that book for the first time 12 years ago, I think, 12 years ago. And that was, so in my agency days, we used to do very traditional hourly rate services. So web design and branding, and we charge hourly for it. The branding projects, though, were the ones that and that obviously with Alex Stapleton and the Stapleton agency, it's a design process, right? So that's why it resonated. But it was always the design projects which used to frustrate the hell out of me and my clients as well. And this is why I got into productizing in the first place. So we would charge at the time, like £50 an hour. We were charging a small local agency, and we'd work like 2 or 3 months on a project with a client, but there would only be like 10 or 12 billable hours in it because we were fairly efficient at the design process, but the communication between us and clients was like such a nuisance. And having listened to the book, I was like, right, I'm going to apply some of these principles and how does it work? So first of all, like you remember in the book, Alex, John Warrilow goes through like the 5-step design process, or can't remember what they call it, right? So I looked at each of the steps in our design process, and I realized there were 7 steps which we went through with every client. And that cut us down from, on average, from about 3 months of a design project down to about 6 weeks. But I actually still wasn't happy with that. So I was like, wouldn't it be cool if we could do a 1-day logo design workshop, 1-day branding workshop? And and how we ended up actually doing it. So I had this concept in my head from Built to Sell. I hope this is relevant and helpful to everybody listening, but it makes me so happy telling this story, Bradley. So thank you, if nothing else. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could do this in a day? And just completely by chance, a client came in, and we'd done a couple of projects with them, and they had a new product launch the following week. And they said, look, we need a logo for this product. Can you help us? Well, really not the old way. And I said, but I've got this idea, like doing a branding workshop in a day. Like, here's how it's going to run. We'll get a designer and you come in for the day. We'll run through our 7-step process, and hopefully we'll come up with like an electronic logo that you can put onto your product. And he's like, great. Yeah. Sign me up. So we did our first one. I think we did it like, he came in at 7:30 in the morning, left at 7:30 at night, but he had his logo. What was interesting, and this was like such one of those inflection points for me in my career. So we'd normally charge like 500, 600 quid for these logos, based on hourly rates. So he said, oh, well, great. Like, how much is this going to cost me? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what I know. I didn't know what I sort of know now back then. I was like, I don't know, £1,500? And he said, yes, like that. So 3 times the price. I was like, wow, it's amazing. And he said, Rob, I'll transfer it over. Literally transferred it over there and then in the meeting. So we had the money up front. We do this workshop. He's super happy when we deliver it. It's a long day, but we did it. We ended up doing about 40 or 50 of these workshops. And then the second big inflection point around this, we then got known for doing these branding workshops. And my mentor who ran a coaching practice at the time, this is before I got into coaching, he triggered it. He calls me and he's like, Robin, I need you to drive up to York. We want you to do one of these workshops tomorrow for one of our clients. And I live it's like 4 or 5 hour drive, and it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I was like, Nick, no, I'm not driving up to York for like a workshop for like 1,500 quid. And he said, just give me 5 minutes, leave it with me. Phone rings 5 minutes later, and he's like, Rob, you're probably going to want to get in your car. I've cleared 18K for this project. Like we never got as much as that again for it, but 18, I was in the car, gone, like driving up the motorway. It was one of the biggest lessons, like there's such a big lesson that I got from that like you can go from £500, 10 hours to 1,500 quid to 18K within like the space of about 2 or 3 weeks. It just blew my mind. Do you know what was really fascinating? When we went out to deliver that project, it was for a £60 million plus construction recruitment company. And we were downstairs working with their software department. And I went upstairs and had a word with the CEO whilst we were waiting for something. And I looked around, I could see these great big canvases with logos on them. And I was like, because I'm doing branding, I was like, what are those? And he says, oh, we're rebranding the mothership. And they'd done these literally like 40-foot wide canvases with like 5 mock-up logos that were just sat like taking over the whole of this office. And I was like, how much are you paying for those canvases? And he went, well, the whole project's like 250K. So I'm glad we've got some canvases. We've actually got something to show for it. And again, I was like, 250K for doing a similar job to what we would do. I mean, on a very different scale, granted, but so I think in that very short period of time, this all happened over about 6 months. Like the lessons I learned about pricing and people's attachment to value and things like that was like phenomenal.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's such an amazing story. And I want to reflect something back to you is that, this person who set you up for the 18K project, them pushing the envelope resulted in blowing your mind of what was possible that you could get paid. That doesn't always happen, right? And so often you, the business owner, have to be the one, get to be the one, what a cool thing, to push the envelope. In fact, I'll tell a quick story myself is that when I was consulting, I was working at some point with a business partner. And him and I were figuring out what do we charge, right? We didn't know either. No one knows. And so, our first project was 20K a month. And then we're like, let's push the envelope. Let's ask for 50. We asked
Yeah.
for 50 and we kind of settled at 45. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, where's the limit here? And we pitched a 95K a month project. I'll never forget. We're like, what do we have to lose? And the CEO came back and she was like, you guys are out of your freaking minds. She was just like, we found the limit, and I don't regret it to this day, right? Because at the end of the day, I finally got a no. Like, we were so used to just getting yeses, and it was a really good problem in a way. But
Yeah.
when you say $1,500 and they say yes on the spot immediately, I'll pay you up front, I'm in your office, you are by definition undercharging. And
Yeah.
you
Right.
only
Yeah.
know where that limit is when you test it, frankly, with multiple clients who potentially see even more and more and more value, right? The construction company saw immense value in your work. And so they're happily paying you, right? 8 times what you had been charging. And that 1,500 was a lot because you started
Yeah.
at 500, right? So it's just, man, it's such a fascinating experience when you really push the envelope and are willing to ask for the value. It feels so uncomfortable sometimes to do it.
Well,
But
one of
God,
the things which I always sort of say to people to bear in mind is don't believe everything you think, because it's going to be you who ultimately is saying, "Oh, we couldn't possibly charge that much. We can't put that number on the quote. We can't add that zero onto it." And I think there's like some dumb rules that we create for ourselves as business owners, entrepreneurs. For example, who made it the dumb rule that you can only put your prices up on January the 1st and maybe by 5 or 10% if you're feeling a little bit crazy, right? Like, you can put it up like a dozen times a year if you want to. You can double, triple, quintuple your prices if
yeah,
you want to. We've had a client 10x their prices, just like we did in that example. And I think what it is around your level of confidence that you operate within as a business owner. And if I've done it previously, where if in that moment I'm feeling really confident, I've had a great day, what wife's woken up, she's in a good mood, and I'm in a good mood, and the kids have just trotted off to school with no problems, and the dogs are happy. And it's like, yeah, I feel good. You put your prices up, and you feel more like inclined to do it then. But you don't have to like double, treble, quintuple your prices. It like it could just be an incremental process as your confidence grows. Right, we're going to pitch 10 people, we'll get 2 yeses at 2.5K. Great. Pitch 10 people at 5K, we've got a couple of yeses. Great. And keep, just like you said, keep escalating the prices until you reach that sort of natural ceiling.
yeah,
And what's interesting as well, this is possibly a topic for another day, but I noticed for me personally, and I've seen this reflected in my clients, there are it's almost like you play the hard game for a long period of time, and you can't predict when the hard game becomes the easy and effortless game, right? But there is a point when you charge enough that all of a sudden the money drops into your bank, and like you can just breathe. Like, wow, that's what it's supposed to feel like. But you don't know when it's going to happen or what the price point is. So I always tell people you've got to keep on pushing the bar until you reach that point where you can just breathe. And it is different for everybody. So for me, like one thing that was super important to me was to have a rainy day fund. I've been on that journey of like struggle and hard and worked hard and built my businesses and things like that. But for me, security was always, can I get £50,000 in a rainy day fund in my business account, having paid for my staff, having paid for tax, having paid for all of my overheads and expenses for 6 months, and have a clear 50K just buffer. And that was my point where I was like, oh, God, thank God. And now you have a choice. You can decide whether you want to take that client on or not.
yeah.
The moment you see a couple of red flags, you can go, oh, actually, maybe it's not worth the hassle because I'm all right. I don't need to take them on.
Yeah.
And that's where the freedom sort of starts to really come into play.
I want to switch gears a little bit. We have a few minutes left. I want to hit on the marketing piece, right? We've talked a lot about raising rates and mindset and, productizing the service. How do we attract, and I know you have some strong opinions here, so we'd love to hear, how do you attract those clients and give yourselves enough opportunities so that you can say no to those red flag clients that just don't feel right? And you can say yes more to the right ones that truly see your value?
Yeah, so there's backstory here. I'll try and keep it brief because I know we're up against the clock. But basically, at the start of 2023, I decided I was going to become antisocial. I was just done with it. And the reasons, there's some statistics to kind of back this up as well, which are quite important. So when I started my business in 2004, here in the UK, there were 468,000 registered businesses. You could get some business cards printed off, show up to a BNI networking meeting, you could get clients. It was like pretty easy back then to pick up clients. But then obviously this magical thing called the internet comes in and makes it really easy for businesses to go online. And so the growth over the last 20 years, there's now 6 million registered businesses in the UK. And these numbers are reflected in the US, Canada, all around the globe. 12 times the number of people just in your own country competing for the same. So whether you're an SEO, a graphic designer, a coach, or whatever, there's 10, 12 times the number of them. Add into the mix then smartphones, social media, and now you create this global marketplace. So everybody's natural inclination is, well, it's easy to sit behind a computer, post on Twitter and Facebook and do all the things that the experts tell you to do, like social media, basically. And it got to a point at the end of 2022, I was spending probably like 30 hours a week on social alone, just like grinding out like content, repurposing stuff and videos, short and long form and blogging and everything, all the stuff, right? Did it all. I was just a bit burnt out by it. So I stopped. But of course, you have to do something to market yourself. You can't just stand still. So I started looking into this concept of partnerships because I was like, I'd spent X number of years building my own audiences, but there were these amazing people who've already got audiences of 100,000 people or 1 million people. And I thought, I'm a good, one of the good guys. I'm very good at, I like to think I'm good at what I do. So I'm just going to go and like be helpful and get into these people's worlds and just see if there's a way that I can form a partnership with them. But it started by being really intentional. So I made a list of 10 people I just liked. They put out great content. It vibed with like what my values were all about and helping the sorts of people I want to help and similar messaging. I started showing up in their world, possibly a bit stalky, I don't know, but every event they put on, I'd be there just being helpful and adding value and things like that. And I remember there was one particular event. So are you familiar with Ali Abdul? He's a YouTuber on productivity. He's got about 6 million subscribers. So not everybody will have heard of him. But so I went to one of his events and there's about 600 people at this event. And they all look a bit lost because they haven't got enough of a team there to kind of direct them. So I was like, I put my bag and my coat down. I'm like, started directing people to the loos and to the auditorium and to the cafe and things like that. And Ali's general manager came up to me and he's like, "Hey, Robin." I'm like, "Hi, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm just helping out." Because like nobody knows what they're doing. He said, "Oh, okay. You don't have to do that. You're a guest." And then he turned to walk away, and then he took 3 steps and turned back. He went, "Oh, Robin, can I pick your brains about something?" We ended up having a conversation. So, and then I ended up coaching his team members. I did it for free because I just liked what they're about. And eventually the opportunity happened. So one of his team members, Joe, had a great session with him and he said, "Look, Robin, there has to be something. I want to pay you some money." I said, no money. I said, "I'll do this for free." He said, "I've got to do something." I said, "Well, I know Ali's recording like a couple of seasons of his podcast. Don't put me forward, but put me on the bench. If one of his 24 guests can't make it, I'll get a train to London to record." Anyway, got the call. We recorded. That one podcast interview generated 3,000 leads for my business. This is in August 23, so 18 months ago. And in total, I think from it so far, about £250,000 worth of new business, so $300,000 each. And it just, again, opened my eyes up to the power of partnerships. And since I've kind of just found these people, been intentional, showed up, added value, I do the same process, possibly being slightly stalky and annoying, but people like it. It's good. It's got me my dream speaking engagement this year in Newcastle at Atomicon, which I'm like in front of 1,500 people. I was part of Chris Doe. He's another YouTuber who I follow with 2.5 million subscribers. So I was part of his entourage at the 1 Billion Summit in Dubai a couple of weeks ago, just hanging out with the guy for a couple of days. And we got on a boat with him for 3 hours, like, Chris Doe masterclass, which you pay thousands for, whereas it cost me 700 quid to rent a boat and invite the guy along. Just like really cool stuff happens with partnerships you just can't get with social media. I find social media slightly depressing, like the act of doing it, and also sometimes like engaging with it. And sometimes it's better just to kind of move away from stuff that just isn't working for you.
Wow, such a cool story. And I want to highlight to people listening and back to yourself of you did so many things in that story that are most people just would never even consider doing, right? Whether it's like stopping everyone, like, okay, I'm going to just help out here versus, and then having a conversation with the GM and then offering coaching services for free, right? So many people say don't work for free. There's just so many things you did to put yourself out there that then resulted in this amazing experience that generated all this leads and this money for you. But people don't want to do that. They don't want to go the extra mile. They don't want to work for free. They don't want to, right? They're like, oh my God, pay me from, it's just, there's such almost like an entitlement sometimes with a lot of folks. And it's like, whatever strategy you choose, giving value, time, expertise, right? And kind of knowing and kind of shooting your shot. You're like, hey, look, sign me up for a spot if there's one available. Right. At some point, you got to make an ask, and you made an ask at the right time and the right person in the right way, and it paid off. So I want people to really conceptualize all the things that you got to do to set yourself up for this winning strategy.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of things. So I'm fortunate in a way that I've built my businesses now to a point where I feel financially more secure. So it means then that I can afford to be a bit more patient with it. I think we have to be realistic. There's a lot of small business owners who are genuinely struggling, and they live very much hand to mouth. I hope that with some of the things we talked about, like, in terms of pricing and sales productization, that and this concept of partnerships, that people start to see ways to do their business differently now. But the challenge with, like, if you are in that position of like scarcity and you're literally hand to mouth, I've got to pay my mortgage and put food on my table for my children. Most people are literally like, the cash is flowing in, it's flowing straight back out to their personal bank account. And it's that thing about, again, like, nobody has a cash flow problem. It's about making a bit more money and keeping some more money, building that security for yourself. But thinking now long term, I mean, again, Bradley, by now, I can go on about this stuff for hours. But The Infinite Game, again, is one of the best books out there by Simon Sinek. And without doing a spoiler on it, he says, like, business is not about short-term wins and losses. The goal in business is the infinite game, to stay in business for as long as you possibly can do. So it shouldn't be about, I need to get a sale now, I need to make money now. It should be about, money will come as a natural byproduct of a job well done. If you're patient and you grow the business the right way and you charge tantamount to the value you deliver, you'll get paid like dividends, like further down the line. And that's why Fearless exists. It's about fearing the things in business ever so slightly less that will stop you from achieving your goals. Like not charging for something, being helpful, doing something slightly uncomfortable by directing people, standing up and doing a 60-second pitch, no matter how awful it feels. Like, it's those little things which actually stand you in the best stead of success.
Yeah. And I'm going to say they're not little things at all. As you said, there's that feeling inside that's resistance, it's uncomfortable, and overcoming that, even if overcoming that period is a big thing. It's a big deal. Man, I could talk to you forever. We do have to wrap up, unfortunately, but Rob, I just want to really thank you for your time and expertise and the stories. It's really amazing to hear. If our audience wants to find you, what's the best way to find you?
Yeah, so the two best ways, shoot me a message on LinkedIn. So I'm on there all the time, so go and connect and shoot me a message. And also YouTube as well. A lot of these concepts, I'm doing weekly videos now on YouTube. I do have a gift. Am I allowed to talk about the book? So
yes,
I've got some free signed copies of the book to give away, and I will ship them anywhere in the world, wherever people are. All you've got to do for that is just head over to fearless.biz/TYS, take your shot. And hopefully Bradley will share a link to it somewhere in there.
yes.
And there's no postage. It's optional if you want to donate a bit towards postage, but I will literally put your address and I'll send it anywhere.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll put the links in the show notes so everyone will be able to access it. I'm going to go ahead and request one of those books, and I'll pay for my own postage. But I appreciate the offer there.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. No, thank you. I mean, really appreciate your time. I look forward to reading the book, and yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on.
Likewise, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, Bradley.
All right, thanks, Robin.